Hello and welcome to another brilliant day of Cutting Edge. We'll be witnessing a thoroughly interesting discourse today. We've got a brilliant uh, speaker lined up for you. But before we dive into it, let me ask a question. Are humans really impulsive creatures? Are we governed by our emotions? Well, I think we aren't. We are, in fact, a sophisticated data analyzing machine. Every decision a human takes is predicted upon subconscious data analysis. Do you really think you sleep because you're feeling tired? No. You sleep because your brain wants to replenish your chemical energy stores. Your brain skims through immense volumes of data and makes decisions on your behalf, and you don't even realize it. This is essentially the same philosophy behind today's topic. Real time big data is the future of business operations. With me here is Mr. Chanaka Kalwarachi, Associate Director of Big Data and AI at Nagaro, who would illuminate us about this novel tech development. Thank you very much for being here, sir.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Now, without further delays, let's move into the discussion. How exactly is big data used in your business? How does it bring in revenue?
Yeah. Okay. The first question is how this big data is related to the business. Business is our main topic here. And there is another factor which we have to goes to some extent beyond big data. It's real-time analytics. So I did understand what are these terms. It is quite good that get a basic understanding of what is actually big data. Big data means it's a huge volume of data. The name suggests it. About 20 years or maybe 30 years back, we never had these kind of words. Even for Sri Lanka, this big data concepts is quite novel. Still, it is in the, I would say, the initiation phase, to my knowledge. 5 years back, it is hard to find someone who's working in the big data business in Sri Lanka. But the world has moved really fast. The world has used this big data more than a decade, even more, maybe early 2000s. That's how they have started. So the data can be of three types. I mean, there are three major characteristics of data. We call it in the technology aspects, we call it 3 V's of big data. One is the volume. You know what is the volume. Then comes the velocity. What would be the speed of the data flows and the variety? You know, when it comes to the data, it can be textual data. It can be audible data, or it can be images just for visualization, or it can be videos. This is how it varies from one to the other. So these attributes now have gone to even 8 V's of big data, including many more other characteristics or attributes like veracity, viscosity, virality. You may have heard these words. Since this is not a technical discussion, and you guys may know these things when you are doing your coursework in IIT. So I'm not going to brief these things in a very higher manner, but I just wanted to touch upon these things before we start. What is actually big data? It's working with huge amounts of big data. So let's come to your question. I would divide this question to 3 things. First, I have already explained what is big data and what sort of characteristics this data have. Of course, the volume, the variety, and the speed it flows. These things matters. Then you come, then your topic mentions it's about real-time data. What is real time? What is the opposite of real time? We call it batch data. The word itself resembles what is batch. If you have a set of data, say in your technical terms, you have a database that has some medical records. Each and every day, this database keeps growing. Say for a hospital keeps all the patient data and the patient's diagnostic details. This database keeps growing. Next day, they may have another hundreds of records inserted. So if you want to do some analysis on this data, we have to create a job that schedules, that runs in a planned time in the day. A set of data will be taken out from the database. It will fetch to a software application which calls a scheduled job, and it will run. Once it is in, it will create some analysis, maybe a report, just a simple report, and keep it somewhere. Or it may be available for the senior managers or the higher consultants to look at. So this happens each and every day. The granularity may change. The daily job may goes to hourly jobs, or it might go for a 15-minute job. That is depending on the number of records that come into your system, as well as the necessity of the reports, the frequency, the update. What is the frequency of update that the records are, the analysis reports needs to be viewed by the senior managers or whoever responsible defines this, the frequency. We call it the batch reports. Then we goes to the real time. Pretty simple. I will take, yeah. If you have a question, please post me. If you have cross questions, please do so.
We can get.
Yeah. So I'm moving into your main topic, the real-time data. Definitely everybody may have gone through Netflix at least once right? So you say the word streaming. This streaming comes from the word of the river streams, right? It flows all the way, it flows. The water does not stop and start again in 15 minutes. It streams. The data also the same. It always comes. The frequency or the gap between one data to the other may be different. Two data points may have 1 hour difference or 1 microsecond of a difference. When that is real-time data, it always flows, it never stops. The frequency, when the gap comes reduced, what happens is the number of data volume increases. Consider 100 kilobytes of a data packet comes in each and every second. We still consider as a real time because it flows in a natural manner and it stays for a long. What if this frequency gets reduced to a microsecond, which means 1 kilobyte packets, thousands of kilobytes packets will flow for one. So if you have created a program which can capture this one kilobyte packet, which comes each and every second, you have a small application, you do some analysis and you put a record. So if your application can run within a second to provide this output, your application is super. So what if 100 records starts coming? Then that's where your application or the hardware that runs your application starts problems, right? If you cannot do it in 10 milliseconds, if you can't do it in 10 milliseconds interval, at least there will be a queue. It's the same way, right? How a river flows. If the river cannot go from a certain point, there will be a flood. So this is how real-time works. So there's another concept called micro-batching. What is micro-batching? If you want, if the batch frequency, the processing interval we keep it to a very lesser amount, like 1 minute or 30 seconds. We do frequent batches. Data set, take it, process it as a batch, but the frequency is quite low. In another 30 seconds, we take another batch, we process, we do the output. This is called micro batching. Real time, whenever the data comes, you process it, you output it. If you can't output it on time, what happens is the data will come. Otherwise, you have to skip some data, or else you have to queue that data for a later run. So when it comes to the business, now your question, I'm taking some time, sorry about it, but I wanted to explain what is the difference of these things. Otherwise, it's no point of going for a business matter. Each and every business use data these days. Of course, you have a bank account, right? 20 years back, I don't know how old are you, right? 20 years back, if you go to a bank, we only had the government or the state-owned banks only. We have to wait at least 50 to 20 minutes just to deposit our money because it's all manual. Then it comes to the digital world. Even it's the digital world, there are very few people who keep online banks. They don't have online banks, but at least digital banks will only kept by very little number of banks, especially Sampath Bank. I'm giving you the name. They are the first people who started in Sri Lanka. Number of transactions is really less, but things evolve after the millennium. Everybody, even you have an account and you have the online banking facility. Definitely you have it. You can do any online transaction. You may have seen when you do a transaction from one account to the other account, say another account of your possession, normally it happens on real time. So if you log in, if you do it in X bank portal and you transfer 1,000 rupees, and in 2 minutes you log into your other bank portal, and if you have submitted that to the next bank and you have log into that bank, you will see that transaction, right? It's real time. It happens real time. But major transactions in a bank supposed to have in batches. Not every transaction. Some transaction, maybe check transactions. They have certain times of time frame in the day. They runs as a batch. Some transaction works in the real time. So this business use this real time data. So consider a state like United States of India, a bank like State Bank of India. They may be having couple of 100 million users. How many people may be doing their transactions within a second, do you think? Several thousands, definitely several thousands transactions happening per second. What if a medical device, say, that's one business. See, the banking industry depends on data and real-time data, right? If there are fraudulent thing happening in the banking industry, if we cannot detect that transaction at that moment, if it only identified from an audit done after a month's time, what is the course of action that we can take? The next country in India, they capture every international transaction on real time. They capture all real-time data and they do verifications from where this money comes to Indian soil. If it is going to outside from Indian soil, they capture it. I know it's the accuracy is 30% from the records that I have found, but at least they have some amount of real-time detection. That's not happening in Sri Lanka. Consider the fraudulent actions, the transactions happening in the banking industry, especially with these illegal drugs. Of course, you have a bank account, I have a bank account. If you are doing a job, there is a certain pattern. I'm coming into data. There is a certain pattern, how the money is deposited or withdrawn. Each and every 25th or 26th, you will get your salary, right? Next 2-3 days, you will be paying for credit cards, or you may be paying for your bank loans, right? And you may be depositing to maybe your parents' account. This is the pattern. But suddenly, if someone is getting money from nowhere and he or she is moving that money, I'm talking about in millions, to another account. If this pattern is not detected real time, there is a fraud happening, but nobody knows it. That's how business works, right? It's just not for banking, but I took a very critical example to explain this thing. Now go to the pandemic situation. Why the world took this much of time to create a vaccine? Do you have an answer? The reason is it took at least 6 months to find the correct data. They did not have that data. This COVID-19 virus was new to the world. They did not have data. They only knew after doing some search when the medical consultants and the research laboratories identified it's an RNA driven virus. How these RNA patterns affect the human body has to understand. To do that, we need to have data. How are we going to create that data? We cannot ingest this the virus into to the people who are not infected and do it. Can't do that. We cannot have a sample. When it starts growing, when it starts from hundreds, then it's thousands in China, then it spreads across the world. Everybody now have some amount of sample data set. Samples are the actual humans who are infected. Then they have more data. They can process this data and they can deliver analytics or the insights. They create insights. Data does not matter. Data does not have any value whatsoever. The insights you generate from that data is what matters, right? Since the data set is too small, we cannot have analytics. We can have analytics, but the accuracy is very less. When you have a bigger data set, right, maybe say at least 100,000 of people in different geographies with different ethnicity, you take samples, you do the analysis in your labs and identify different subvariants as well, how they behave. So lots of data needs to be analyzed first, then only you create the correct vaccine. Isn't this was a new business to the world? How many health industries were emerged and how many dollars, millions of dollars they have earned? As an example, Pfizer. How many amount of money they have earned? Think about the Indian companies, the drug business companies. They have created these vaccines. It's a new business to them. How do they did it? Because they have that data. They use that data. They analyze that data. They got an output from that data, which is the pattern of that virus, how it behaves. Then they create the vaccine. It's a new business. They couldn't do it without the data. This is how the data is required from every business. Consider the new car that is built by a Sri Lankan company called Vega, right? It's an electric vehicle with many sensors. This car is evolving from its inputs, whatever the sensors that it has, right? It captures each and everything. The steering position, the comfortness, what is the velocity, what would be if you go, the terrain will be taken into consideration. Everything will be analyzed. The data is processed, and then it has used analytics reports and identify where they need to do the improvements. It's another business. When it comes to the retail business, right? Take the Sri Lankan online retailers and worldwide retailers like who? Take Amazon. Everybody may have gone to Amazon. Everybody may have gone to eBay. Doesn't they take data? They consider the data. I'm highlighting how the business evolved, right? Amazon was just doing the business on selling books, but these books were sold online then, right? How are you going to, the Jeff Bezos was thinking, how I'm going to improve the sales selling, right? So how do I go to the pierce the market with new techniques. So they build the online business, right? Then they start to get the patterns of the buyers. What are, say, Chanaka Kaluarachi may be interested in space science. If he is always looking at the books of space science, does it matter? Does it make sense to put some books as a strap bottom of your web page, which provides data or the books of pets? Does it make any sense? I'm not going to buy, but when I'm looking at a book which provides of the SpaceX program in Tesla, right? I'm looking for a book. Then suddenly, if the system can show in the bottom strap, okay, I have another book which how the latest comet that is identified comes into the coming. So if the system can showcase another book, I would buy that one as well because it's interesting to me. So they have what you call it, they multiply the business. It's data, and do the real-time analytics as well. Identify my interests. Okay, this guy is looking for space books. I will give another one. Bundle it, sell it. That's how the business grows. I have given you 4 businesses. There are a lot many.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. That was very insightful. Before we continue with our discussion further, let us go on a short commercial break. Do you believe that it is the next big thing in tech, or is it bound to lose momentum as data scientists figure out more efficient ways of data study?
I would rephrase this question. We are on this realm already. This is not the next thing. We are already in it. Do we foresee this trend will stay? Right? When the data science comes into the picture, will this diminish? What do you think? This is already the big thing. Big data is the big thing.
Yes.
Right? Not the next big thing, it's already started. Maybe next big thing for Sri Lanka, but when you go outside the world, it's already there. Big data is the topic that I would say control the entire world because we are digitalized people. I'm kind of an old guy, not like you. In my childhood, we did not have these digital devices. We have never seen a mobile. We don't know laptops. Of the computers were there. The computers are like when I'm learning, it was 486, 386 machines. You may have not heard. I mean, I don't know when you are learning the history of the computer hardware may have given you some thoughts. Those are the facts. So let it be. So, but now it's all depends on data. It's already started. Everybody in Sri Lanka, every organization organizations, especially the giants, maybe in the garment industry, they are heavily using big data. It's already started. Garment industry in Sri Lanka is quite one of the places that heavy technology is using. And of course, the IT industry, the IT organization in Sri Lanka now developing many big data work, especially in the telecommunication industry. Lots of things are happening, especially in the health industry. Yes, some retailers. Of course, I mean, if Mr. Rohan was there, he would agree with me because he's in John Keel's. They have their own development. Like Nagaro, we are experts in big data, which we have about 750 active clients within the worldwide, and a very good portion of these people are maybe 30-40% are using big data. So this is not the new thing, this is already there. I don't know about the students who are looking at this the session, not sure whether they have seen the TV series which happens in the early 80s, which is called Knight Rider. You can see it in the YouTube. There was this Knight Rider is a car. It was self-driven, or we call it autonomous and intelligent car. While we were in schools at that time, we were thinking, oh, what a car. And we have seen the maps in the car. So when the driver wants to go to a nearby place, the car himself goes to the map and identifies the best suitable route and provided. It was magic at that time. I'm talking in the early 80s, right? It was magic. But see how it was emerged to this. Now we already have autonomous vehicles, right? If I ask the question, what is the most prominent name in the entrepreneurship world? It's Elon Musk. Elon Musk has started using big data plenty of years back. Now he's going to build the next gen autonomous vehicle. It's the most closest autonomous vehicle at the moment, but it is not yet considered as the fully AI driven or auto driven vehicle at the moment, because there are lots of standards that they have to meet. I mean, it's like this much amount of million hours needs to be drive and tested before it is selected. But now it is close for some extent. How it is decided? Because there are thousands of sensors in this Tesla vehicle. It's not just the battery; it has not many things. If you go to a Tesla vehicle, it's a complete computer. From your seat adjustments, the heat, temperature, the speed, your suspension levels, engine, the fuel consumption, to the speed, right? Or each and everything is measured real time, and it is uploaded to the cloud real time, and it understands how a driver drives. What a driver expects, it is personalized as well. Driver X is driving in this manner, and he is feeling these conditions. How we are going to improve these conditions? What will be the terrain? Terrain will be taken into the consideration real time, and it compares how the car behaves for that bumpy terrain. Do the adjustment, improve it next time, build the software, and automatically ingest it. The next day, the car is another version upgraded. See, so we are in this thing. It's not going to data scientists. The second question I will come, right? I will come to the second questions. Whether once the data scientists figure out more efficient ways, will it diminishes? That's what your question, right? It's not the case. It's not the case. Because there are many things to discover. Many things to discover. So it's not just Tesla. Think about the previous example, AWS, Jeff Bezos, right? Besides e-commerce, Amazon has become the largest provider in the world of cloud computing, AWS cloud computing. This is all on data, nothing else. He was thinking how to handle this data. What can I do? I may be able to develop some software that can process, that can store, that can do analysis, that can visualize this data in a proper manner. So this business evolves just because of data of the organizations, right? Now the other organizations, because of the other organizations' data, this business drive. And because of this business, other organizations also thrives, right? They cherish us. It depends. The organization cherish or perish depends on how they handle their data, because keeping data does not matter. It's a dumb thing. Data is dumb. You have to analyze whether it is batch or real time. You get the insights and you ingest that insight into your business to grow. That's where how things happening. Is it lose momentum? Your question, right? No. Why is not? because of the volume, nothing else. The volume is exponentially growing. No matter how many data scientists comes and find out the ways of analyzing things, it's going to be never ending, because next day the volume will be the types of data, the new types of data coming into the picture. The volume of data is exponentially growing. So we have to find new ways. 10 years back, the algorithms may be able to identify smaller patterns, but now it is quite different. I will give you an example. Las Vegas, it is the major city for casinos. There are thousands of thermal cameras and face recognition cameras for each and every roulette or whatever the desks. It's a gamble, not a mathematical thing. If you go and do card counting or trying to apply a very genius mathematical concept to this desk, the others who are looking at from your looking at your desk and you're looking at your face, that applications, whatever these cameras, the feeds coming from that cameras, real time will detect that you are counting or you are doing something fraudulent in the sense for the casino business, real time. So that's how the data scientists have understood and build algorithms where they can capture the facial recognitions. They try to what do you call it? They try to identify by the human expressions what they are thinking. These are well tested stuff. But next day, it's not going to over. They cannot stop from there, because people will find new ways of doing fraudulent ways, right? The new ways of games will come into the picture. Very smart people might come into play. So then the data scientist needs to build the far more sophisticated algorithms to capture those things. It's never going to stop. Of course, data scientists will drive this thing further. As per my understanding, for the next 20 years, nothing will change. It will start growing, and you will end up finding magical algorithms coming into your picture.
Thank you, Mr. Chanakya. That was very interesting and insightful. Now I understand that this is a vastly complex system. But do you not think that to fully utilize its capabilities, it would require very experienced and highly skilled data analysts, something that is exceedingly rare? What do you make of it?
I would say the question is, of course, I mean, we need skilled people, right? But how can I? Okay, so without these skilled people, you cannot drive anything, right? Maybe people who are brilliant, we call it people who they have PhDs, may do maybe the average guy cannot do, right? So going for the previous example, right? That I was talking about, this the facial recognition thing, right? People may have done new ways of algorithms by doing some research work. So they may be, if you want to go to the next level, of course, these new things should come. But of course, if you want to keep the things in the same phase, you have to have people who can work on these things. So at least average people also we require. Average to super experts we need. The simple question is, yes, we cannot survive without the experts. But of course, the same time, to run the business, you may need the average people as well on this analytics or data scientist. The brilliant people will shape the business to the next level. That's how things happen. If the Wright brothers who were not able to build the aeroplane, someone else would have done it, but later. But even though the aerodynamics engineers knows everything, they will not be able to build that aeroplane 150 years back at that time. But to keep the aeroplane business, there should be aeroplane engineers. Likewise, the same thing. The data business has to be run by data analytics, data engineers, BI people, average to expert. Did I answer your question?
Yes, sir. Sure. Thank you for your insights, sir. So let us go on a short commercial break before we dive into more discussions.
පිට්සා වලට අද ක්‍රෙඩිට් කාඩ් ඔෆර් එකක් තියෙනවා.
එක්කමට පිට්සා ඕනේ නෑ. අයියෝ ඇයි අපි ඕඩර් කරමුකෝ. මම එච්චර කැමති නෑ පිට්සා ගන්න.
බොරු කියන්න එපා. එහෙනම් එදා කෑවේ? හරි හරි. අපි හැමෝම ෂෙයා කරලා බිල ගෙවමු.
මම පර්ස් එක ගෙනල්ලා නෑ. අනික පර්ස් එකේ තමයි කාඩ් එක තියෙන්නේ.
තාම IP දාගත්තේ නැද්ද? දැන් බෑන්ක් account එක විතරක් නෙවෙයි. ක්‍රෙඩිට් කාඩ්, ඩෙබිට් කාඩ් සේරම IP app එකට දාගන්න පුළුවන් නේ. පර්ස් එක උස්සගෙන කාඩ් සේරම අරන් යන්න ඕන නෑ.
ලංකාවේ වැඩිම දෙනෙක් භාවිතා කරන ෆයිනෑන්ස් ඇප් එක iPay.
Welcome back, viewers. Today we are discussing the topic real-time big data is the future of business operations with our speaker for the show, Mr. Chanaka Kaluarachi. Continuing the discussion further, now the big question of data analysts is data privacy. The more big corporations push for data analysis, the more they'd be willing to get their hands on people's information. Do you think people should be concerned about their personal information?
Absolutely. The personal information matters. Why fraudulent sites are emerging a lot? Because the data is the money. As I mentioned, if you can grab many information, then only we can create a pattern and identify this form. Because they can't show the face. They may be not knowing they know their name, their age, their whatever the attributes that they can get it, then they can recreate a virtual guy and they can emit that fellow. I mean, it's like understanding how he's going to behave. Say, if someone is identified, say this each and every Tuesday, this is the third week of Tuesday, I'm going to a shop and I take a coffee. So if someone was able to get this pattern, say Google can do that. If I have kept my Android mobile phone connected to Wi-Fi or mobile device connections, right? Google knows where I resides normally. Then he understands, okay, this guy has traveled from X to Y for this coffee shop each and every Tuesday, third week of Tuesday, because he's taking at this time. So these are data. If someone wants to do me a bad thing, if someone grab that information, because it's that pattern has considered by that pattern may or may not captured by Google. I don't know. If Google has pattern recognition for each and every guy, I believe they have, right? They know I will definitely 98.5% of accuracy. This guy will go on March 3rd week for this location and he will stay for this much amount of time. He uses this route which takes 15 minutes approximately, and he spent approximately 40 minutes in this shop, and he uses a different route and come back to home. So entire thing is they know if someone who can do a bad or mischief grab these things, what happens? They can manipulate me at this position because they know this. I'm about to come there, and they know I'm going, whether I'm walking or I'm going for a vehicle, because of the time duration that takes to travel that distance. All these things are there. That's where each and every organization who deals with big data or whatever the data thinks about the privacy. When it comes to the business, customers are their main asset. It's not the employees, because the assets, the clients or the customers who are the people who pay the salary of their workers, right? So they have to make sure that the workers' identity are kept, if their personal data are kept secret. They cannot be revealed. Nobody would like. The billionaires in this country don't want to reveal their wealth, right? if the bank somehow disclose that data, that billionaire will be in trouble, right? So when we are developing data related applications, whosoever the client, look from the basics as well. It starts from the organization's landscape itself. Whether they have implemented ISO 27001 kind of security information protocols. First, they check whether the fingerprint scanners are there. Nobody can enter to the premises without a proper ID. These things, that's how they start. When it comes to the application building, from the data perspective, clients of that organization ask, what are your data privacy protection mechanisms? If you are using medical records, if patients' medical health and kind of data is the data set that the application works, number one thing is we have to make sure we consider PHI data, protected health information. We should be compliant to HIPAA standards. You can just Google it and see. I'm just giving you some examples. That's why these standards has evolved. And when we are doing a business, when you are doing an IT business, if you are providing a product or a service related to big data, whosoever who takes that application or the product, consider these things. What are your security measures that you have developed? So when the big data world emerges, the software that makes sure or give the assurance to the customer that the data protection is already inbuilt. The personal data is already available inbuilt is what do you call it? It makes sure there are softwares that is built. So if you go to the cloud, whether it is Azure cloud, whether it is AWS, whether it is Google, they have their own methods of protecting private data. And whosoever build that application needs to consider that we don't work with the this private information is not touched, which we call it PII data. Personal identification information. It's like the name. You can identify from the name, right? So we don't need to build analytics. We don't need this PII data. When we are developing an application, first we have to test with the real data set of the client, right? When we take that data set, we always ask, please do not provide the PII data. If you are providing the PII data, please make it anonymized. Because the world has evolved, you can build the analytics without considering the PII. It is not particular individual. It is the individual attributes that decides. If I have another clone of me that has the same attributes, it will the analytics will come up with some reports that is exactly matching me and my clone. It's not Chanaka Kaluarachi or XXX. So we always, whoever work with the big data, privacy is the number one fact that we have to guarantee that the clients, we have to assure them no private information we access or we provide it to, whether our application has some loopholes or backdoors that can access this private information and someone can manipulate that thing. There are two ways. First thing, the applications, they don't want PII data. Even though if the PII data is there are protection protocols that the application developers, the big data application developers needs to adhere. Otherwise, it's not considered as a standard software or a big data software. So this is how this assurance is given.
Thank you, Mr. Chanaka. That was very clear, interesting, and insightful.
And of course, sorry to. So I have to give another example because this is something important. You may have heard about China. China does not allow Facebook, WhatsApp kind of stuff. Why is that? That is because the government of China thinks they should keep their data within that territory. It should not flow because someone else would use that data to identify what is happening within that region, because they think about their security into the next level. So the same thing happens to an organization. If a European organization thinks whatever data that I generate, whether it is batch, real time, or whatever type of data, should not go beyond the European boundaries, because they are governed by the EU organization, right? So if they feel, okay, this should not flow beyond that territory, it should not, my data should not be resides in US or India. So how this is being done? There are other policies. One policy is called the GDPR. That is that GDPR policy makes sure that no data will flow outside of Europe. Whoever built an application for this kind of organization needs to adhere to the GDPR data. So to help this thing, even the software vendors provide that support. The three major cloud providers, they have their own regions within that territories. EU region may have a German data center, an Austrian data center, but Austrian data center may exchange data with German, but it will not exchange data with the Mumbai data center, because they are adhering to the GDPR standards. It's a regional wise protection is also there. This is how we make sure for our clients your data is secured, because data is massive in tera and petabytes of level. We should not allow their personal data, which I call you, that is the asset. That data will be processed and create the analytics to grow their business to the next level. If someone else got hold of this data, that business, someone else may take over. That's inside information. That is something that I forgot to mention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chanaka. Finally, what would you tell someone that's interested in pursuing this field? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, one of the I would say the most important question, right? Everybody's talking about big data, data analytics, AI, machine learning, data science, all these technical jargon you can find from Google. But I can segregate all these things to three things. First is the data engineering. One is the analytics. Third one is the BI. I will explain you why. Because as students, you have to decide what feature or what segment that you should touch, and in which segment you should start and grow yourself. If you want to go to the next stage, how you are going to do that transition. So my first segment is data engineering. Data engineers are the people who take the data, do slice and dicing, do the processing, and save it somewhere that someone else can use it for analytics. Then comes the second segment, the analytics or the data science. This processed, curated, or cleansed data, which has been stored by the work of the data engineers, will be taken for the analytics. They are the people who use the advanced algorithms, whether it is random forest, logistic regression, or going to a next level like XGBoost, neural networks, whatever they put into this data set, which is already curated by data engineers. Why this curation required? Are these all data cleansed? Are we sure they are unique? How are we going to merge some data and create a different data which is required by machine learning people? So that's the data engineering, because first it starts from the data engineering. Maybe thousands of servers or the databases may be available within a certain organization. Think about Toyota. They may have massive data sources. Some data sources may be batch, some may be real time, right? All these data will have to be taken into probably what do you call in our technical jargon, we put it into a data lake. We take that data lake data and do some processing using advanced Spark, Hadoop. If you want real-time work, then using things like Kafka, Flink, and do whatever the processing and store in a data warehouse. Then the third segment evolves. This data warehouse data can be taken out by people who consider them as business intelligence people, or the BI, or as the reporting people. They do some SQL processing, SQL processing, and they create some reports and showcase to the senior management. That is dashboarding, business intelligence. The second segment I was talking is the analytics people. They can take the ingested data from the data lake. The data engineers do some work, and they take data from the client's data sources and put it into a data lake. If you don't know what is data lake, just forget about it. You will learn from your IIT, the degree programs. You will learn these things. These data will be considered by the data analytics people. They will put whatever the algorithms. Some I explain a couple of things, and they will do some machine learning work. They will apply some artificial intelligence and do some analytics and give some predictions. It can be diagnostic, it can be predictive. Insights can be different levels, right? We call it diagnostic, what happens, right? Then predictive, what will happen, right? Those kind of analytics can be created. Those analytics is where the business use for their business growth, at least to reduce the cost, identify the correct market segment, what will be the next best product that we need to create, how are we going to pierce the market by making products more appealing to the customer. All these things are matters, right? So for the answer for your question, the student has to decide which segment that I should touch, where I should grow, whether the data engineering is a massive one. Then should I do business analytics or the data science, where the real analytics work does? Or else am I going to be a business intelligent guy, where I work with the dashboards and the reporting? These are the three pillars that we have to first consider where we should start. One can start from data engineering. He will be working on Python, Scala kind of languages. He may be using Spark, Hadoop, data lake, data warehousing concepts, right? And the business analytics, the actual analytics or the data science guy may be using algorithms and doing the slicing, dicing of the data. They will understand the attributes. They will take those attributes, apply those the algorithms to those attributes. They identify the patterns, build the insights. That's data science. Someone who takes these reports or analytics, get these curated data or whatever the machine learning predictions created by data science guys will be showcased by business intelligence people, BI people. That's the third segment. So that's it. So we have to follow the correct course first, whether it is data engineering or something. You cannot do everything at the same single time. But of course, when you're stepping up to your career ladder, of course, you can shift one by one. Start as a data engineer, then learn some machine learning work. If you want, you can do some BI work later in the course. You can do it. I would suggest you can do online courses. There are Microsoft certifications. There are some AWS certifications related to data engineering, data analytics, and BI. All three segments are covered. You have to identify the correct course and do it, which is related to your area. Then do some Google work. That's the best thing. But reading is okay. Understanding is the second thing. But execution is what matters. It's not just theory. Do it hands-on. Then you can try.
Thank you very much for all that insightful information, Mr. Chanaka, and for taking some time off your busy schedule and joining here with us. It was such an inspiration. So I'm certain that the people watching this would have a better understanding of data analysis and its nuances. So viewers, we have come to the end of another session. We believe that this session has been very insightful and informative to you. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more items brought to you by the ITV.
Hello guys, so it would be an honor for me to inviting for the judging these innovative ideas, and with my colleague, that's really nice to have insight of the students doing their projects and everything, and kind of surprised with some applications they have done, uh, especially the novel play application. So he was able to get the application of a basic algorithms and created a good business on that, and but he can improve on the scope of his. And overall I have seen that everyone is capable of doing the great innovations and everything, but in my idea they should not just limit themselves on the technology. Like most of these are either image processing or machine learning, that's fine, but not just using those algorithms. Yeah, they should think out of the box and think like what can be done with this algorithm, and if we can combine multiple and get the business value out of it, like an novel play. So that's a good example. And some presentations are actually pretty good and they have pitched a lot more, but even though you have done a good application, but your pitch also should be very thorough and it should be understandable by any person. And many of the people have seen that they misled mm, the scope, but the areas they can improve on their scope as well, the affected areas. So yeah, that's pretty much I can say about all things. I wish everyone best of their luck, and yeah.
So we did see some really good potential projects today in the cutting edge exhibition. And first of all, I would like to thank the organizers to inviting myself and my colleague Chamil to this event to have a look at the projects. So there is a lot of potential, and normally given the software products, we usually see something related to stuff that they do. Certain domains are very popular, like ERP, warehouse management, accounting softwares, and those kind of things are very popular in Sri Lanka. But seeing some projects that is going beyond that, looking into medical domain, and then looking into approaches, like I saw a very interesting project today using analyzing story books or novels using data like text mining, and those kind of interesting areas has been tapped by students, and I believe that will result or improvement in overall quality of life uh, for all of us, because these products, in the end of the day, the motivation is that they end up somewhere in the market. So I wish all of them all the very best, and they hope they continue the same passion and enthusiasm they shown to participate in cutting edge and presenting the ideas and actually solving some of these crucial problems. And I hope they continue that same passion and enthusiasm in the future. I wish all the very best for the students.
So my overall feedback is been really interesting to hear these project ideas, and from what I've heard, I've seen a couple of at least good potential when they finally come out in the market for the use cases and what we have in the industry. Maybe one of the main kind of improvement or something to note is about the evaluation. So most of the time when they do the project, since this is a research project and something works, they kind of not evaluate in depth. So what I feel is even the data set and the evaluation should be considered more on the projects more than, of course, you need the implementation and it to work, but you should not stop there, but you need to go into more experts and get some more evaluations done to just validate when you present your research. So just having more than any simple data set, just having more data set and more in-depth evaluation would help with the research more. But overall, I'm really happy on the projects I've seen and I've heard, and I feel like they have really good potential on any future competitions, and also a really good potential on the market when they come out or when they release.
Thank you, Prasanth.
Yep.
Yeah. So my name is Aruna Nagawat. I'm from Citrigon as a lead UI UX and front-end engineer. So the idea, there's like few good ideas and the great implementation on the industrial level. Basically, they are target basically local audience and which will bring, if we bring it up to the market and implementation, that going to help a lot of locals and improve the country situation as well. I'm really good, really happy, and it's a really good ideas, and looking forward to seeing those application on the public markets. Thank you.
So first of all, I would like to thank the organizers of Cutting Edge IIT for inviting myself and my friend Priyanka over here for this event. And first, I would like to, I see a lot of innovative, that I see the students adapting to the new technology and embracing new things considered what I have seen in the past. So they are using blockchain and augmented reality, those technologies more, and trying to build products and come out of the POC, proof of concept level, and trying to bring it to the market. So that is really a good thing I see, and that's something we should encourage, because we are trying to build the next generation of software engineers, and I see that is already happening at IIT, and the quality of the presentation and the thinking behind it, and trying to even though they are doing the software engineering, they are trying their best to understand how the market, and they are trying to build a product that would fit in the market, and trying to return some value to the investment made. So which is really good, and I appreciate that thinking. And then for IIT for have giving this platform for the students to actually come and present, it could build up their confidence and ability to present ideas to or do business pitch in the future, which will help help them in their careers down the line. So I wish all the students all the very best with their products, and I wish and I hope that they continue that same passion and enthusiasm in the future. Thank you.
Priyanka, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, so just like Pratisha said, thanks so much for having me here, and it's such a great pleasure. I'm only sorry that I could not see the rest of the projects, and we only be able to evaluate two. I share the same sentiments as Pratisha, and the students are trying, and they are working really hard, and both the projects that we evaluated were real life situations and solutions that are, or problems that are there out there in Sri Lanka as well as in the industry. But perhaps something where they could improve is thinking from the customer's perspective, and which of course IIT will be taking them on that journey on how to get it from a customer's perspective, as well as whether it suits the industry needs. And like I said in both the evaluations, undergraduates are not supposed to solve world hunger problems or bring the dinosaurs back to life. So look at a problem that is already existing or a system, and then see how you could improve on the solutions that are there in the industry. That will actually give you more research as well as space to think out of the box. So IIT is known for, all the students from IIT are known for out of the box thinking and also presenting them really well. And I wish all the students the best of luck for their future. And we are there to help as alumni whenever they need. And kudos to IIT for brilliantly developing several generations of software engineers and business analysts.
Thank you, Pratishana from 99X and Priyanka from London Stock Exchange Group, and for their valuable contribution and also the support during the judging session. And also we'll take into consideration your ideas and thoughts, because it would also be needed for the progression of our students. And we always value your support and input from the industry. And thanks so much. And it was great time having with you guys. And thanks again.
Right. So I've seen some brilliant projects today in this particular what do you call this slot, right? Some really brilliant projects. So unfortunately, we can look at the entire set of projects that you've lined up, but something that can be commercialized, something that like I've seen some young entrepreneurs coming out of this. That's brilliant. It's not just like techie people, but people who think about the overall environment and the world. So and how to improve. Like, so there are some projects that I could easily say that could be like game changing. That is a good thing which comes from cutting edge. I believe I've been here again to I believe over a year or two back where such projects were there, but now I'm seeing a more improved setup when it comes to people, the kids who are working on these projects. So I'm really impressed with cutting edge and IIT right now.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Zulan. We can go to Mr. Vihenga as well.
Yeah, even my point of view is that this cutting edge really gives the students really a sort of a arena to like showcase their talents, right? And what I saw with today's the 4 or 5 projects that we did was that most of them have very highly technical, I think, knowledge on these different areas. And I would say when I did my final year project, and when I was part of IIT as well, so back then the technology, the projects that were showcased compared to now, there's a big gap there. And I think that is something that needs to happen, and I think it is happening right now. And they have really good knowledge, and the projects they have done is at a higher caliber than what it used to be. So I'm very impressed. I actually did not really expect that. So I would really like, I'm really happy that they have that opportunity even before they move to the industry to actually showcase their projects and get feedback about their projects. So that is really, that's a really good thing. So yeah, that is sort of my view on the whole thing today. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. So on behalf of IIT, I would like to say a big thanks for you for your valuable time spending here at a crucial time like this. Like most of people are at the Aragalero now, right now. You are you are utilizing your important time for IIT. That's wonderful. So thank you for joining with us, and we hope that you will join in the next year as well for the judging.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
You can
Deshan.
leave the room.
Thank you. Definitely will be joining, because this is such an interesting platform for people to, to be in the judge panel, as well as the kids, to see the kids coming out of the woodwork, like, brilliant people coming out. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Dulan.
Bye bye.
It was nice getting to know
Thanks,
you.
guys. Thank you.
Yeah.
See you.
Thank you, Deshan. See you. Bye.
Hi everyone. Today with us we have Ms. Randula De Silva.
So, Ms. Randula, it's a pleasure to have you for Cutting Edge 2022. So, to give an introduction about Ms. Randula, she is the founder and CEO of Good Life X, and her work stands at the intersection of creativity, people, and the old and new economies to drive systematic changes across sectors. She has over 12 years of experience in creating smart solutions, accelerators, and innovation platforms for the startup and SCM ecosystems in Sri Lanka. Ms. Randula was awarded the Chevening Research, Science and Innovation Leadership Fellowship from the University of Oxford in 2022 and the Game Changer of the Year at the Women in Management Sri Lanka Top 50 Professionals and Career Awards 2021, hosted in partnership with the International Finance Corporation. So she also holds a BBA in Business Economics and a master's degree in Development Studies from the University of Colombo. So that's a brief introduction to Ms. Randula. So over to you.
Thank you, Visal, and thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me to be part of Cutting Edge. It's an absolute pleasure to be speaking to you and speaking to your community about, I think, a very interesting, crucial topic. When I was invited to do this talk, the topic given to me was rising above crisis and rebuilding a better and stronger Sri Lanka. And I don't think we need to treat the topic of the crisis as the elephant in the room anymore, like we used to do. I think in the past year or so, it's very much a living room topic now, and it's very much in the common vocabulary of every person. This moment of crisis that we are going through as a country. So when we speak about Sri Lanka, when we speak about the crisis in Sri Lanka, I would like to take a step back. I would like to take a step back and stop looking at 2022. And I would like to revisit the time that I was born to Sri Lanka. I'm an 80s kid. I was born in the late 80s, which makes me a millennial. I don't know if that's a cool thing or not anymore. But I was born into a country which was at war. Like many of my colleagues, like many of the people that I work with, that I have very strong connections and relationships with. And this is how we grow up. This is the world that we see as children. And then suddenly it's over and we come out of it. And I have in my team, in my working environments now, those who are entering the workforce who've not even experienced what it was like to grow up in war, what it was like to be living in a Sri Lanka, which was at war. And in between this, we recovered as a nation which didn't have the status of a country at war next to it. But my question is, did we really get out of that mentality of not being able to live in harmony and in diverse environments where we could really thrive and celebrate one another's diversity, and go into being one nation as one country? Because soon after the war, when we look at a lot of political connotations, a lot of socio-political connotations that happened soon after, there was always tendencies to find yet another insecurity, yet another threat, not only in ethnicities of the country, but in anything which was alien, anything which was easy to be labeled as alien, anything which was not known, not mainstream, anything that's unknown was deeply threatening to many Sri Lankans. Even if it wasn't, it was portrayed to be the case, just so that it was easy to manage and use such kind of weaknesses for power purposes. But the beauty is what happened in Sri Lanka in 2022 is that people proved that all of these were simply symbols, simply tools that were not deep rooted in people in itself, but were merely tools which were used against the people and against the unity of people. And what happened in 2022 in early April with the People's Movement was that all Sri Lankans came under one flag, one banner, wanting the same thing, which is a new country and sharing the urge to rebuild a new nation together as one. So I think with that itself, Sri Lankans as citizens experienced a massive victory. And that is really our true victory, to have come together as brothers and sisters, and to have stayed together and to have marched together, asking for a new Sri Lanka, where there is a future for all of us. So why did I go back to the time of war? Because crisis is not new to Sri Lanka. Crisis is not new to Sri Lankans. Right now, what we are going through is a historically very adverse, very deep, very catastrophic economic crisis. But we've been through very many chapters of crisis as a nation, which makes us also inanely resilient. And I think somebody recently told me, we can easily put in our CV now as a qualification that it's a qualification to be a Sri Lankan right now in Sri Lanka, because we are going through so much, and we are steering through so much. We're riding so many waves in order to survive and build back and to dream. So this is the context in which this crisis unfolds. And at a global level, beyond our country, beyond our little island, there's a lot of things that's happening. There's a war out of the blue that's happening. There's global warming, there's heat waves coming through, and there's very many economies that are experiencing many spheres of the crisis that we are facing. And all of this is come together because we have been protecting archaic models and fixed mindsets as the globe, as world, and also as Sri Lankans. So I wouldn't personally blame a single person, a single government, a single party, or politics at all for the moment that we are facing right now, for the crisis that we are facing right now. If we are Sri Lankans, if we are born in Sri Lanka, if we are living in Sri Lanka, if we've built our careers, if we are studying in Sri Lanka, if we are actually based here right now at this moment, I believe the blame really comes to all of us. The problem we have is we are born and bred through a blaming culture. There's always another person who's responsible, and it's never us. But this systemic issue that we are facing, like I said, is stemming from archaic models and fixed mindsets. And those archaic models were protected by us. The fixed mindsets were carried on from work to life to everything we do by us. So each Sri Lankan really is responsible and had a part to play in this crisis. I'm not talking about votes. I'm not talking about who voted for who. I'm talking about everyday decisions that we made as Sri Lankans, as human beings, which protected these archaic mindsets and models and structures, which led us to this crisis. So with that, I want to emphasize on the point that a crisis, we use this word a lot. Crisis is never just a crisis. It's only an indicator. It's only like a traffic sign that asks you to stop. Stop and investigate, understand why these symptoms of the crisis is emerging, and address those root causing issues, the rooted issues that is really creating the symptoms that we are seeing and calling and labeling as the crisis. So we have got this indicator now to stop. But what have we really stopped? And why did people really get this indicator to stop? Why did this suddenly become everybody's problem, and people took to the streets. People created this people's movement without any leader, because it became everybody's problem. Everybody lost fuel, everybody lost power, everybody lost access to education, everybody lost access to medication. So it became everybody's problem. But really, the issue is that we never looked at it as our problem when it was really a problem from decades long ago since independence. We always thought there was somebody else to take care of these things, and we were only concerned about what was in our plate and what was at our doorstep. And that really is the root cause to all of this. So very dire image I'm painting right here. But I want to also ask the question from the audience. We are going through a lot of adversities to live as Sri Lankans right now. It takes a lot of guts. It takes a lot of resilience, a lot of biting the bullet to live through these times. And it's not easy. But I would like to ask the question, who sees an opportunity in these moments? Do you see an opportunity? I am someone who believes that no crisis should go a waste without seizing the best out of it. People can say that is a typical opportunist. But really, in order for us to emerge out of a crisis, the first thing that we need to understand is that there is opportunity in this. If we don't see opportunity in this, understand and identify that that is the mindset that really led you and us to this place, because we feel and we see and we think nothing works and there's no solution, and or somebody else needs to give the solution to us, and we don't have the opportunity, ability, or the weight on our own to create the solution. So first thing to understand is that there's opportunity, because the only way to emerge out of a crisis, the driving energy to emerge out of a crisis, is the hope that we normal Sri Lankans, normal citizens of Sri Lanka have in our hearts, which will drive us to create solutions. And the next thing is we need to have the understanding that short-term wins are not things that we need to go after. Be it economic wins, be it financial restructurings, be it systematic change, be it small things we want in our life, or the most important things that we want for our well-being, for the well-being of our children. If we are after short-term wins, it is only a demonstration that we are trying to appear to be strong, or we are trying to appear to be brave. But we really need to understand that the only run in a crisis is the long run. We are inanely brought up in a culture where fast and quick is the way to go. Our attention spans are very, very short right now. Everything is instant, including our food. And that is really not going to help. That mindset and mentality and approach is not going to help us emerge out of a crisis. So the question is, do you care enough to play the long-term game? Are you brave enough to fully go into this and give your fullest self, give your full potential and your life and all the comfortabilities that you really want to expect in the long run, to gain those expectations in the long run? Do you have the guts to do that? Are you in for the long game and long run or not? Because if you're chasing after short-term wins and quick solutions, that is only going to drive us into, again, a downward spiral, which led us here. With all of this, what exactly are we trying to rebuild? We're trying to rebuild a nation. But how do we get about getting there? How do we get about doing that? There's a lot of talk about constitutional reform. There's a lot of talk about policy changes. All of that is needed and necessary. But we are mistaken if we think that itself is going to help us overcome and emerge out of this crisis. As individuals, as students, as business owners, as entrepreneurs, all of us have a role to play in rebuilding the Sri Lanka that we envision to rebuild. This is the moment where we all get the opportunity to create our design, to create our dreams. So we need to first become a person who has emerged out of the crisis. We have to become a person who's different to the person who created the crisis, who were part of this crisis. a lot of people might not agree with me when I say we created this crisis, but I explained to you earlier why we all had a part to play in this. So it's important that you understand every decision you make in your ordinary lives, every decision you make on how you spend your money casts a vote to the kind of the world that you want to create. It's not only your buying decisions, but also your lifestyle, your values. What do you consider as status symbols? How do you form your relationships? How your organizations work? What kind of work do you go into? All of this would be supported by the policy restructurings and reformations that we will envision and encounter in the next 12 to 24 months. So when I talk about lifestyle values, status symbols, I would like to go a little bit deep into this. A real life example of lifestyle changes is the lack of ability to access fuel. Right? It affected the sectors that I am working in a business level, in the SME sector, in the startup sector. People didn't have access to fuel, which affected their business of delivering their goods, of getting access to energy, of running their machinery, of keeping their factories going. All of that, yes. But also it affected ordinary lives of people, of getting yourself to work, getting to a hospital, going to the grocery, and you know, the conveniences that you experienced as urban citizens of Sri Lanka. But with the fuel just not being there, people looked at alternatives. All of a sudden, public transport was an in thing for millennials and Gen Zers. Cycling was a cool thing to do for middle-aged people. So this is a change that we saw that happened in our urban areas in the recent months, right? My question is, when fuel queues get shorter, when we emerge out of this crisis in a couple of years, are we going to fall back into our same old lifestyle, same old ways of getting to work, same old ways of getting to the grocery, same old way of doing our ordinary normal things, of having 5 cars per household? Or are we going to take something out of this lifestyle that we're experiencing right now and take it into the emerged status where we would be a cycling nation, for instance, how Amsterdam and Netherlands did it some years ago. So these are questions we need to ask ourselves. This is just a very, very clear example that I gave to you that many people in Colombo and in urban areas are experiencing, but this kind of changes are relevant to every other detail in our life. How we farm, how we eat our food, how we cook our food, how we help our neighbors, how we choose to work, what kind of work we go into. All of this is relevant in order for us to emerge into a new economy that we want to create, in order to not fall back into the same conditions and situations that brought us here. I'll give you another example of status symbols. When I was in Oxford, and our course director, he's a very, very senior professor at University of Oxford, and he was, of course, the curator of our program. He selected what topics were coming in, what speakers were coming in, what kind of meetings we wanted to have, whatever kind of meetings we wanted to have. He had the key to open those doors. He was a very powerful person. Yet he was also running the administration during the course of our program, because his supporting colleague was not away and not well. He had to do so many things a typical professor in our ecosystem wouldn't do. He had to buy our bus tickets. He had to make sure the logistics were in place for all the fellows, the 26 fellows, to be comfortable for 2 months. Right? And this person did it with so much grace, so much humbleness, and beauty. That, and then on the other hand, I work with millennials, 30-year-olds, who don't want to go an inch away from their job description. They want to use the designation and the title that they have at work as a status symbol, including graduates coming out of Sri Lanka, right? Degree is really a social certificate for them, and nothing more. And if you are asked or expected to pick up a ball that has been dropped and do something that's out of your expected role, like putting up a flip chart, for instance, for a workshop, if you're a senior analyst. I've had instances where millennials have felt like they can do more with their lives. See, this kind of attitude, this kind of mindset of thinking that certain things are below you, beneath you, riding a bicycle is beneath you, taking a bus is beneath you, sharing a taxi is beneath you, eating Sri Lankan grown food is beneath you, taking a vacation not in the Caribbean but in the jungles of Sri Lanka is beneath you. This is the mindset that really drove us into the crisis that we're in. It is the choices that we make. It is where we see value in our lives and what we associate as status symbols are. So this is the example that I really want to take here and speak about, so that I illustrate that we as Sri Lankans need to stop living beyond our means, stop consuming beyond our means, and reset the way that we look at our values, look at status, look at relationships, and reset why our organizations exist, and reassess the type of work that we go into, and make sure that we make each and every decision in each of those aspects in our life to build back a better Sri Lanka. Here, I want to emphasize, when we are building back a better Sri Lanka, the power of parallels. A lot of people believe that you need to eradicate an entire system, eradicate something that's not working for you completely in order to build something new. Or you need to get rid of everybody, and you need to start from scratch. You need to clean the table entirely to serve a new dish. I don't believe in this. I believe in building parallels, and I believe that this is a very, very powerful approach and technique for us to emerge out of the crisis. And the lack of parallels, the lack of building parallels really is why we are at a situation where we see no alternative right now than going back to a few of the same old things that Sri Lanka has been forced to fall back to in terms of power and politics. What does it mean to build a parallel? I'll take an example from a very close community to my heart, which is the RIT Hub in Jaffna. They've been doing amazing work around entrepreneurship and innovation for the past, I think, 12 years, ever since 2010, I think. And without being a part of any ecosystem, any education institute, which was, a national education institute, or having any national policy backing them or telling them what to do, as a sheer volunteer community, they've built curriculums, they've built programs, they've built schools, and they've inspired and given knowledge for generations of young entrepreneurs coming from the northern part of Sri Lanka to think innovatively, to have access to technology, to have access to networks. And because of that, and because they did this consistently without waiting for anybody to change anything, they took on the horns to build small solutions that they believe in independently, individually. At the beginning, they were standing alone, individual efforts, right? But now it stands tall as a parallel that is giving education, that is giving a lot of solid insights and opening of doors to the youth of the Northern Province. And I think youth of Sri Lanka overall, because their accelerators and coding challenges are for the entirety of Sri Lanka to access technology and community more than anything. And that is a very strong example of how they build parallels, how a parallel can exist and be built in order for the new to emerge. It could be done parallelly while the old or whatever that's not working for us exists. You can build a parallel of a world that you dream of a world and a future that you envision today, here and now, without any of these old things changing. You can build this here, today, now, because when this collapses on this own, this will be the only thing that stands. And that is true. So it's very important that each of us understand what is the country that we envision to build. What is that one thing that we want to contribute with? It doesn't have to be major things, but can we build that as a parallel? Can we get in more and more people to support us? Can we build a community around it in order for it to be built as a parallel? And that will then be, if you give it all you've got, that will then be the only thing that's standing when the old system collapses. So never underestimate small efforts that you make out of your own, because for future, that is going to be something that's going to be a very decisive thing that shapes what the future of Sri Lanka looks like. So in an ideal scenario, a Sri Lankan emerging out of the crisis would be a person who would have all of these traits in them. Locally rooted, who understands the inherent values Sri Lankans hold, Sri Lanka holds, in our geography, in our abundant resources, in our diverse communities, in our culture, in our food, in our brilliant, intelligent human resources. We would understand and we would be locally rooted enough to know our strengths as well as our vulnerabilities and weaknesses. Do we have that now? Okay, let me get to that later. Okay, so that's one thing. And we will be Sri Lankans who are globally minded. We won't have this component where we would only think Sri Lanka, but we would understand where the world is moving, what the world is doing, where the world is headed, and we would understand how to plug into it and deliver world-class solutions and become world-class citizens and become global talents, because that is what is required out of us right now to be competitive globally, right? We would be creative people. We would be collaborative above all. We would know how to work with one another. And we would understand that solutions needs to happen holistically and systematically. And we would understand what the large global perspective or the large big picture perspective looks like. And above all, we would be Sri Lankans who are brave enough to take on the long run game, right? So this is the rosy picture, the ideal Sri Lankan emerging out of the crisis, or the ideal Sri Lankan who would take us out of the crisis. So the ideal person that you and I can become. But in reality, okay, I'm coming back to the doomsday now. We are innately insecure still. Our values are misplaced still, okay? And we are deeply unrooted. We don't know what the rest of the country is going through or doing. We are still very much stuck in our urban bubbles or in our communities bubbles, wherever we may be. And it takes almost, a year to work with someone that we don't know in order for us to build trust, in order for us to understand each other and to get to work with each other. We don't know what it's like to compromise. We think our way is the only way, and we think that our perspective is the only perspective, and our solution is the only right solution to arrive at an objective or to arrive at an outcome. And we are constantly suffering with the mindset of big fish in a small pond scenario. We want to be known. We want to be the banner bearers or the champions of our own accord and of our own solutions, but we are really not willing to look at holistic solutions. We are not willing to be collaborative, even though it's a word that we speak. We are still doubting one another. We are still not willing to compromise one path that we think is the right path, to merge with the solution of another person and take completely new different path to arrive at the same objective. We are not ready to do that. And if we don't get out of this cycle that we are in, we are going to come back to the scenario of, again, like I said, going through a downward spiral, hitting the same roadblocks that we've hit as an independent nation for the past 73 years as Sri Lankans. So it's deeply important to take some time to understand that actual progress, actual emerging out of a crisis is created if we are flexible and if we are renewable in our approaches and if we take on diverse approaches into creating those progressive changes. More brains, better solutions around one table. But are we ready to work like that? Are we ready to look at another person's solution? Are we ready to listen as a nation to another person's opinion? Is the government ready to listen to the people? Are the people ready to hear what the government has to say? Are we ready, if you're a scientist, are we ready to listen to somebody coming from the industry? And are we willing to work with them together? If you're coming from the industry, are we willing to listen to the academia? Are we willing to work together with them in order to come out with a solution? This is what we've encountered over and over again in the past. And this is really what we need to get out of, in order to emerge out of the crisis. So it's a time for a conscious revolution, where we are inanely conscious about what got us here and what is going to take us out of here. It calls for conscious entrepreneurs who are not only willing to work for their own benefit, but are going to commit to work for the greater good through the products and solutions that they are going to put out into Sri Lanka and into the world. We are in the dire need of conscious consumers who knows that every bit of money that they are going to put on the table is going to cast a vote for a new world that we are trying to create. We are in need of conscious innovators who are willing to contribute to a new Sri Lanka that we are going to build, whose innovations are going to be creating a positive impact for our economy, for our environment, for the people, and for the entirety of the ecosystem who's going to use their innovation. We are in need of conscious investors who would see and understand that we need to build new companies, new ventures, new projects that are not the same old repetitions that got us here. That is not another Me Too startup, another Me Too investment, or a copy-paste model of the Silicon Valley, but are actual solutions that are solving the problems that are rooted to South Asia and Sri Lanka. That's what's needed. We need conscious politicians who are willing to run the long-term game and long-term strategies, who are not going to sign papers of restructurings or development projects that are going to bring back results in the next 3 to 5 years only so that they can carry that banner to the next election, but who are willing to sign papers and put down priorities to actual needs of this nation that are going to be bringing back long-term benefits for the country, be it in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. And that's what got Singapore to where it is at, because they have a very long-term, consistent national strategy that works for the nation and its people and not for the short-term needs of the business leaders or the political leaders who are driving those strategies. And above all, we need conscious citizens. That is you and me. Regardless of the role that we play in this economy, be it a business leader, be it an investor, be it an innovator, be it a student, be it a parent, we are all citizens. And we need to be conscious about the way we live our lives every day, the decisions we make on how we live our lives every day, where we put our money, where we go to work, whom do we choose to work with, how do we treat our partners, and how much are we willing to be brave enough to be not insecure, to be not a big fish in a small pond, but are going to be locally rooted, globally minded citizens of Sri Lanka who are going to be conscious and critically aware of what's going on around you and has the ability to think for yourself and make decisions for yourself in order to emerge out of this crisis, because it's not going to be easy. The next few months, the next few years is not going to be a cakewalk. if I say so. But it's going to give us a bountiful amount of opportunities to create the new world that we all can create together. And it is your time really to drive this conscious revolution. And I would end with the statement that we all talk about a systemic change, right? That's something that we hear all across social media and in the rhetoric. But systems only change when people do. And that's why I spoke so much about people here and not about policy or economic reforms, because we can drive policy and economic reforms if we change. So systems only change when people do. And it's important to understand that I am the system and we are the system. So let's drive that change and let's emerge out of this crisis as Sri Lankans, but not as Sri Lankans who got ourselves here in the past 73 years, but as Sri Lankans who are going to be resilient and brave and conscious to emerge out of this crisis as one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Randula, for that amazing presentation. So just to add to it, so I heard this famous quote, "To change is difficult and not to change is fatal." So I believe that applies to us Sri Lankans at this given time. It's crucial that we change, we seize opportunities, try to do as much as possible such that we get over this current situation. So thank you very much for that presentation and the webinar. And thank you very much for being a part of Cutting Edge 2022. I hope you have a great weekend. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of it. And it's an absolute pleasure to have been speaking to all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.